Roger Stone is with us. He's a former aide to President Nixon and author of the book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. That is quite a charge.
It is.
And you were sitting here a minute ago and you said, no, he's a serial killer.
Yeah, in my book I actually tie Lyndon Johnson to 8 murders prior to JFK. Murders to cover up epic corruption, corruption of biblical proportions, murder to cover up the theft of his first term in the U.S. Senate, where he stole the election by 86 fraudulent, non-existent votes. Lyndon Johnson was a coarse, loudmouth bully. He was a crude, nasty, vindictive, manic depressive, somebody given to deep depressions and wild outbursts of temper. But more importantly, he was greedy, he was corrupt, and he was ambitious. And in November of 1963, he was a man staring into the abyss. He had 2 major scandals that threatened his place on the ticket. In fact, JFK tells Evelyn Lincoln on the eve of leaving for Dallas that Johnson won't be on the 64 ticket. He says, I can't tell you who it will be, but I can tell you it won't be Lyndon. So as Kennedy's trip to Dallas approaches, LBJ is not only looking at political ruin, he's looking at prosecution and prison in both the Bobby Baker scandal. Bobby Baker is Johnson's right-hand man, the Secretary of the U.S. Senate, in essence Johnson's bag man, and also the Billy Sol Estes scandal, where Robert Kennedy's Justice Department has given a full dossier to Time Life Incorporated, and there are 9 investigative reporters on the ground here in Texas looking into LBJ's finances. And he knows that not only will he be off the ticket, but the Kennedy brothers intend to prosecute him and send him to prison, which speaks to his desperate motive. The Life magazine expose is scheduled for December 1st, 1963.
So tell me about you say Nixon verified this in the Watergate tapes?
Nixon says in the Watergate tapes that the Warren Commission is the greatest hoax ever perpetrated. Nixon is in Dallas the day of the assassination, and he is actually leaving Dallas as JFK is arriving. When he gets to New York, he hears on the radio in his cab that Kennedy has been shot. When he gets to his apartment, the doorman tells him that the president is dead. He goes to his apartment, he calls J. Edgar Hoover. Now, he's feeling a little guilty because when he's in Dallas, he has a press conference in which he attacks the foreign policy of JFK, and he predicts that LBJ will be dumped from the ticket. And therefore, he's worried about being blamed, that he may have contributed to the so-called atmosphere of hate in Dallas. So he says, Edgar, was it one of those right-wing kooks? No, Hoover says, Dick, it was a communist. Well, Nixon believes that for 48 hours. Until he sees Jack Ruby blow away Oswald on national television. And then he says, I know that guy. In fact, we know from records that are cited in my book that Lyndon Johnson, as a congressman, asked Congressman Richard Nixon to hire Jack Ruby as a part-time informant for the House Un-American Activities Committee. And he is introduced to Nixon in 1947 as a Johnson man, a man Lyndon would like on the payroll. So I think it speaks to why Nixon says the Warren Commission is a hoax.
I also say KGB records.
Yeah, we find out in 1996 there's a declassified document. It's a memo from FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover to President Johnson saying that the KGB has conducted an exhaustive investigation and they have determined that you, Mr. President, are the killer of JFK. We also know that Jackie Kennedy goes to French intelligence, where she obviously has relationships. She's a Beauvoir, she's the toast of Paris. She asks them who killed my husband. They conduct an investigation, which is published in French, in France. I have a copy. It's very hard to find. They also point the finger at Lyndon Johnson. Jack Ruby, who never is allowed to talk to the press, but there is video of him being dragged down a hallway in handcuffs. And a reporter shouts out, Jack, how could this have happened? And Ruby says, if Adlai Stevenson were vice president, this never would have happened. They say, Jack, what do you mean? He says, look at the man who's in there now, the man at the top. That's Lyndon Johnson.
How sure of this are you? I mean, I haven't read the book, I'm sorry to say, but I have looked to see your footnotes, and your footnotes are exhaustive.
Well, because I think there's actual evidence. In other words, it's not just a theory. There is a fingerprint found in the 6th floor sniper's nest in the Texas School Book Depository building for a man named Malcolm Wallace. Malcolm Wallace is a longtime associate of Lyndon Johnson's. He's a Marine marksman. He's a convicted murderer. And he has held a succession of political patronage jobs arranged for him by Lyndon Johnson. 6 witnesses tell the Warren Commission that they saw a man who looked like Malcolm Wallace, heavy-set, balding, wearing horn-rimmed spectacles, in the window of the 6th floor sniper's nest prior to the shooting. They are ignored. One of the witnesses says he sees Wallace flee the building and jump in a car immediately after the killing. There are 4 attempts on that man's life, that witness's life, between 1963 and 1978.
Okay, I'm going to give this to a friend of mine. I'm going to read it, and I'm going to give this to a friend of mine who also is he's a myth buster. He's a guy who likes to look for the truth, and we will have you back after we do that. Thank you very much. Name of the book is The Man Who Killed Kennedy. Back in just a second.